Before we dive into this story that's sure to move you, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It might seem like a small thing, but that simple action makes a huge difference. It's what keeps this channel going and gives me the strength to keep bringing these stories to you. Now take a deep breath, because what comes next is powerful. The sun hung low over the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the shores of Ipanema Beach. Waves crashed rhythmically against the sand, their steady hum blending with distant sounds of samba and chatter from beachgoers. Nestled right at the edge of this paradise was Sol and Mar, an upscale beachfront restaurant with glass railings and white umbrellas swaying in the breeze. Guests sipped cocktails and dined on seafood while enjoying a postcard view of Rio's coastline, framed by the silhouettes of Sugarloaf Mountain and the distant Christ the Redeemer. The scent of grilled fish and citrus lingered in the air, and the entire scene radiated leisure, wealth, and elegance. But behind the glamour, something far more sinister was unfolding, something no one in this haven could possibly expect. At the center table closest to the ocean sat Ricardo Albuquerque, a man as powerful as the waves that carved the shoreline. Known for his vast empire in real estate and finance, Ricardo was a fixture in the upper echelons of Rio's elite. Clad in a tailored linen suit with dark sunglasses reflecting the sunlight, he exuded control and confidence. His every gesture was calculated, his every glance a command. Opposite him sat his much younger wife, Natalia, effortlessly beautiful in a flowing silk dress that moved like water in the breeze. Her features were flawless, framed by glossy black hair, but her gaze was distant, locked on her phone rather than her husband. She twirled a diamond bracelet absent-mindedly, as if each spin might distract from the boredom behind her perfect smile. Just outside the restaurant's glass barrier, a boy watched. Thin, sun-darkened, and wearing a hoodie far too warm for the weather, Mateus pressed his body against the railing as if proximity might pull him into their world. His eyes scanned each table, not with envy, but with hunger, literal and otherwise. He wasn't new to this stretch of sand. To the wealthy diners, he was just part of the landscape, a shadow they didn't want to see. But Mateus saw everything. And when his eyes settled on Ricardo's table, something made him stop. It wasn't the food or the designer sunglasses, it was the movement of Natalia's hand, slow and deliberate, as it dipped into her purse. She pulled out a small, translucent bottle, the kind that might hold perfume or eye drops. But what she did next made Mateus freeze. With a glance toward her husband, still busy checking his phone, she uncapped the bottle and tilted it over his bowl of steaming moqueca. A few drops fell, disappearing instantly into the stew. She stirred it slowly, her face an unreadable mask. Then she leaned forward and whispered something low to Ricardo. Mateus couldn't hear the words, but he saw the chill in her eyes as clearly as the sun overhead. His breath caught. He didn't know what was in that bottle, but his gut told him it was something terrible, something no one else had seen, and he was the only one who could stop it. Mateus ducked behind the railing, heart pounding. His fingers gripped the warm metal as the crashing of the waves faded beneath the roar of his thoughts. He couldn't believe what he'd just witnessed. Could someone so elegant, so composed, be capable of something so vile? The thought of that man, old, distracted, unsuspecting, lifting the spoon to his mouth, sent a chill through Mateus's spine. But what could he do? Who would believe a boy like him? He was just another kid from the street, invisible to everyone except when he got in their way. Yet the image of that bottle, of her cold eyes, wouldn't leave him. He had to act, even if it meant everything turning against him. He climbed over the barrier, legs shaky but determined. As soon as he stepped onto the deck, the shift was immediate. Waiters paused mid-step. Patrons stared in mild confusion and annoyance. A child at a beachfront table pointed at him, and his mother quickly turned the child's face away. But Mateus didn't stop. He walked straight to Ricardo's table, every step heavier than the last. As Ricardo lifted his spoon, Mateus found his voice. "Don't eat that!" he shouted. The sound cracked the quiet like lightning. Glasses clinked. Conversations halted. Natalia turned first, her head snapping toward him like a whip. "What did you say?" she hissed, rising from her chair, her poise vanishing in an instant. Her voice was sharp, slicing through the stunned silence. Ricardo's spoon hovered midair, frozen inches from his lips. Mateus's voice trembled but didn't falter. "I saw her," he said, pointing at Natalia. "She put something in your food, from a bottle. I saw everything." A collective gasp rose from the surrounding tables. Ricardo looked from the boy to his wife, confusion furrowing his brow. Natalia's mouth opened, her face contorted in disbelief and rising fury. "He's lying," she barked. "He's just some beach rat trying to cause trouble. Who let him in here?" But Mateus didn't back down. "I'm not lying," he insisted. "She took a bottle from her purse and dropped something into your bowl. I saw it with my own eyes." The tension in the air thickened, as if the ocean itself had paused to listen. Ricardo slowly set the spoon down, his hand shaking ever so slightly. He stared at Natalia, his voice low and measured. "Is that true?" She scoffed, placing a hand on her hip. "You're really going to believe this child over me?" she said, her tone growing more shrill. But even as she spoke, her face betrayed her, eyes darting, jaw clenched. She was slipping, and everyone knew it. The murmurs from nearby tables grew louder. Some guests pulled out their phones, cameras already rolling. Others watched with wide eyes, caught between disbelief and fascination. Natalia's voice sharpened as she turned on the crowd. "He's just trying to manipulate you. He probably wants money, food, whatever he can get." But no one moved to support her. Ricardo leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Then he looked directly at Mateus. "You saw everything?" he asked, voice low. Mateus nodded. "She poured something in while you were looking at your phone," he said. "A few drops. Then she stirred it. I swear, sir, I'm not lying." Natalia let out a bitter laugh. "This is insane. Ricardo, you know me. You really think I'd do something like that?" Her tone cracked at the edges. The confidence she wore like perfume was fading fast. Ricardo didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked down at the bowl in front of him, perfectly plated, fragrant, untouched. Then he looked back at her. "You've been distant lately," he said, his voice calm but cold. "I thought it was stress. But now," his gaze narrowed. "Why would he lie? What does he gain from this? He doesn't know us. He has nothing to win." That question hung in the air, heavy and unanswerable. A nearby waiter, who had been frozen in place, finally stepped forward. "Senor, should I call the authorities?" he asked tentatively. Ricardo didn't take his eyes off Natalia. "Yes," he said. One word, sharp, definitive. Natalia's breath caught. "No!" she snapped. "You can't be serious!" She turned to Ricardo, voice trembling now. "Please, don't do this. You know me. You love me." But the fire in her words had dimmed. Panic flickered behind her lashes. The waiter rushed inside. Silence fell again, broken only by the sound of seagulls circling above. Mateus remained still, his fists clenched at his sides. He didn't know what would happen next, but he had no regrets. Natalia suddenly lunged forward, grabbing Ricardo's arm. "You don't understand what this looks like," she cried. "It's not what he said. It's not—" Ricardo pulled his arm free with surprising force. "Then let them test it," he said coldly. "If you're telling the truth, you have nothing to fear." Her eyes darted to the soup, then to the crowd, then back to the street. The sirens were already audible in the distance. Natalia took a step back, shaking her head. "This is a mistake," she muttered. "All of you. You're letting a street rat ruin everything." But her voice was cracking, unraveling like a seam under pressure, and no one was stepping in to help her. The wail of sirens grew closer, slicing through the calm rhythm of the waves. Natalia's breathing became shallow, her eyes scanning for an escape, but there was none. A pair of uniformed officers appeared at the edge of the deck, stepping forward with deliberate calm. One of them addressed Ricardo directly. "We received a call regarding a potential poisoning. Can you tell us what happened?" Ricardo stood slowly, his linen shirt catching the breeze. "This young man," he said, gesturing to Mateus, Claims my wife put something in my food. The officer turned to Natalia. Ma'am, do you have anything to say about that? Natalia folded her arms, clinging to a brittle version of her composure. He's lying. He's just a homeless boy who snuck in here to stir up trouble. Look at him. Her voice tried to regain strength, but the tremble betrayed her. He doesn't know what he saw. The officer raised an eyebrow, then glanced at Mateus. What exactly did you see? Mateus took a breath, then spoke clearly. She pulled a small bottle from her purse, dropped something into the bowl. Clear liquid. Then she stirred it. The officer nodded slowly, then turned back to Natalia. Ma'am, we'll need to test the food. As one officer moved to retrieve the bowl, Natalia stepped in front of it. No, that's ridiculous. You don't need to do that. Her tone was desperate now, no longer polished. The officer's partner narrowed his eyes. Is there a reason you don't want us to test it? Silence. All eyes locked on her. Ricardo's jaw tightened. Let them test it, Natalia. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then slowly, she stepped aside. The officer lifted the bowl and examined it carefully, then turned to his partner. We'll need forensics to confirm anything, but this will go with us. Natalia's face crumpled, as if the weight of that single action crushed what was left of her resolve, and then it broke. Fine, she spat. You want the truth? She turned to Ricardo, her eyes flashing with bitterness. You smothered me, controlled everything. I was just decoration to you. I was tired of waiting. Tired of being nothing while you played king of the beach. The confession hit like a slap. Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Cameras recorded every word. Ricardo's face went blank with shock. The officer closest to Natalia didn't flinch. You're under arrest for attempted homicide, he said calmly. Please place your hands behind your back. Natalia didn't resist. Her fury had burned out, leaving only ash and silence. The handcuffs clicked around Natalia's wrists with a cold finality. Her once graceful posture collapsed under the weight of humiliation and exposure. As the officers led her through the restaurant, she shouted over her shoulder, voice trembling with rage. You'll regret this, Ricardo. All of you, he's just a street rat. He tricked you. But her words bounced off stunned faces and disapproving stares. Guests moved aside, phones still recording, eyes wide with disbelief. The perfect woman with the perfect life had unraveled in front of everyone. And it all began with the voice of a boy no one had noticed until today. Ricardo sat down slowly, the silence around him deep and hollow. He stared at the spot where the bowl had been, as if seeing it for the first time. For a few moments, he didn't move. He looked older, not just in years, but in spirit. Betrayed, wounded, raw. Then slowly, he lifted his gaze to Mateus, who still stood there, unsure of what to do. You didn't have to do that, Ricardo said, his voice low but clear. Mateus shifted his weight, nervous. I couldn't walk away, he answered. It just didn't feel right. Ricardo gave a slow nod. Most people would have, he said, and I would have been dead. Mateus lowered his eyes, unsure what to say. Around them, the restaurant began to stir back to life. Waiters cleared tables, murmurs replaced gasps. The moment had passed, but the impact lingered in the air like the smell of salt and fire. One by one, the customers returned to their meals, their conversations, their lives, but with occasional glances toward the boy who had saved a stranger. Ricardo watched him carefully, like he was trying to see through layers that no one else had ever bothered to look at. Then, with a quiet breath, he gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down. Mateus hesitated. I probably shouldn't, he began, but Ricardo interrupted. You should. There was no anger in his voice, only something closer to respect. Slowly, cautiously, Mateus took the seat. His hoodie clung to his skinny frame, and his eyes flicked around, expecting someone to yell at him, push him out. But no one did. Ricardo leaned forward. What's your name? Mateus, the boy said quietly. Do you have family? Ricardo asked. Mateus paused. Not anymore. The words hung between them. Ricardo looked out at the ocean, its endless blue stretching to the horizon. "You've got courage, Mateus," he said, "and I don't say that lightly." The soft crash of waves filled the quiet between them. Mateus shifted in his seat, unsure how to react to kindness that felt so foreign. Ricardo reached for the glass of water in front of him, took a slow sip, then set it down carefully. "What you did back there," he said, "that took more strength than most men I know have." Mateus shrugged, his gaze dropping to the table. "I just didn't want to watch someone die," he mumbled. Ricardo's eyes lingered on him. "Most people would have watched and done nothing. That's the difference. That's why you're still here, and why she's not." Mateus didn't answer right away. His stomach growled softly, loud enough to be heard. Ricardo noticed, lifting a hand to signal a waiter. "Bring him something hot, whatever he wants." The waiter, still a bit tense from the earlier drama, nodded quickly and disappeared. "I didn't do this for food," Mateus said after a moment, almost defensively. "I know," Ricardo replied without hesitation, "but you still deserve to eat. Dignity isn't a reward, it's a right." The words hit Mateus harder than expected. No one had ever said something like that to him before. For a long time, no one had really spoken to him at all. Minutes passed. The light over the ocean shifted into a deep amber glow, painting the deck in warm, fading color. The waiter returned with a large plate, feijoada, rice, farofa, and slices of orange. Steam rose from the dish like an invitation. Mateus stared at it, unsure if it was real. Ricardo nodded toward the plate. "Go ahead." Slowly, as if expecting it to be taken away, Mateus picked up the fork and took a bite. The warmth, the richness, it hit him in the chest before it hit his stomach. He hadn't tasted something like this in so long, he'd nearly forgotten how food could feel like safety. Ricardo watched him eat for a moment, then leaned back. "I've known men who had everything and they were cowards. Today I saw someone with nothing who stood up for what was right." Mateus glanced up, unsure how to respond. "You don't have to say anything," Ricardo added. "Just remember, this doesn't have to be the end of your story." Mateus took another bite, slower this time. Something was changing. The fear that lived in his bones, constant, unshakable, had loosened its grip. He still didn't know what tomorrow looked like, but for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid to imagine it. As the last rays of sun slipped behind the mountains, the beachfront took on a gentler rhythm. Lanterns flickered to life along the promenade, casting warm light on couples strolling and kids chasing soccer balls through the sand. Inside the restaurant, the chaos had faded into a kind of reverent calm. People were still talking about what had happened, but now it was in hushed tones, their eyes occasionally flicking toward the table where Ricardo and Mateus sat. Mateus kept his head down, focused on the meal, but he felt their stares. This time, they didn't feel cruel. They felt curious, maybe even respectful. Ricardo set his napkin down and leaned in. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. Mateus paused mid-bite, chewing slowly before answering. "Since I was 10. He said. "After my mom died, I just stopped being someone anyone noticed." Ricardo's face didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. "That's going to change," he said. "Starting now." Mateus frowned, not out of defiance, but disbelief. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Ricardo tilted his head slightly. "I don't need to know everything. I know the most important thing. When you saw something wrong, you stood up. That's all I need to know." A breeze swept across the deck, bringing with it the scent of the ocean and distant music. Mateus wiped his mouth with the edge of his sleeve. "What if I mess it up?" he asked quietly. "What if I don't know how to be anything different?" Ricardo smiled, not the rehearsed, diplomatic smile he used in boardrooms, but something softer. "You've already proven who you are," he said. "You just need a chance to grow into it." Mateus looked down at the empty plate, then out at the darkening sea. The world felt different now. Not softer, but somehow less heavy. He wasn't used to hope, but maybe it was something he could learn. The waiter returned, this time with a gentle tone. "Would the young man like dessert?" Ricardo raised an eyebrow at Mateus, who blinked in surprise. Maybe just a dote de leite? He said cautiously. The waiter nodded and left. Ricardo watched him. It's okay to enjoy things, he said. Survival teaches you to expect nothing, but now you get to expect more. Mateus nodded slowly. He didn't quite believe it yet, but part of him wanted to. He looked back at Ricardo. What happens next? Ricardo leaned back, eyes on the horizon. Next, you rest tonight, and tomorrow, we rewrite the next chapter of your life. The dessert arrived on a small ceramic plate, creamy and golden, glistening under the soft candlelight. Mateus hesitated before picking up the spoon. He ate slowly, savoring each bite like it might be his last. Ricardo didn't speak, giving the boy space to experience something so simple, yet so rare in his world. Comfort. Around them, the hum of the restaurant returned to normal, but their table remained in its own stillness. Mateus finally looked up. What if they don't want me? The people you're calling to help. Ricardo folded his hands. Then they're not the right people, and we'll find others. But you're not doing this alone. The night deepened, stars beginning to peek through the indigo sky. The ocean reflected their light, gentle waves brushing the sand like whispers. Mateus leaned forward, his arms on the table now. I used to think I'd just disappear one day, he said. Like the world wouldn't even notice if I was gone. Ricardo's jaw tightened slightly. I know that feeling, he said. When I was your age, I wasn't rich. Not even close. People walked past me like I didn't matter. He paused, looking Mateus in the eyes. But someone saw me. Just once. That was enough. The boy's brows lifted. You. Ricardo nodded. We all start somewhere. Mateus glanced at the street beyond the railing, where the city lights met the sea. It still doesn't feel real, he said. Like maybe I'll wake up back behind the kiosk tomorrow. Ricardo shook his head gently. You're awake now, Mateus. And what happened today? What you did? Changed lives. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. This is my number, my real one. Keep it with you. Whatever happens, you call me. Mateus picked up the card like it might crumble in his hands. No one had ever given him something so personal, something that felt like trust. The waiter returned once more, this time with a folded note. From the woman over at the corner table, he said softly. Ricardo took it and read it with a slight smirk before passing it to Mateus. It read, You were very brave today. Thank you for speaking up. Never stop. The boy stared at the note, blinking quickly. He folded it and tucked it into his pocket like it was made of gold. I didn't think anyone noticed, he whispered. Ricardo smiled. They noticed. You reminded everyone here that courage doesn't wear a suit or live behind tinted windows. Sometimes it wears a hoodie and speaks with fear in its voice, but still speaks. The night had fully taken hold now, the sky a velvet canvas lit by stars and the glow of the city behind them. The last of the diners began to leave, some casting one last glance toward Mateus with quiet respect. He didn't notice. He was too focused on the sea, the breeze, the strange peace blooming in his chest. For the first time in years, the ache of hunger had been replaced by something else. Possibility. Ricardo stood and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. They're waiting for us at the front, he said. The ones who will help get you settled for tonight. Mateus stood slowly, gripping the business card in one hand, the thank you note in the other. As they walked together along the deck, Mateus glanced back one last time at the table, the empty bowl, the flickering candles. It felt like leaving behind a different life, maybe even someone else's life. He looked up at Ricardo. Do you think people can really change? Ricardo smiled. People don't just change, Mateus. They grow, like the tide, slow, steady, and powerful. And you've already started. They stepped down onto the promenade, passing tourists and vendors and the pulse of Rio at night, but to Mateus it all looked new, like the city had shifted just slightly in his favor. They reached a sleek black car parked just beyond the restaurant, where a woman in a professional uniform stepped out with a warm smile. Mateus, we've been expecting you, she said. Her voice was calm, kind. like no one else had spoken to him in years. He turned to Ricardo, unsure. "Go," the older man said gently. "It's your turn now." Mateus nodded slowly, stepped toward the car, then stopped. "Will I see you again?" Ricardo placed a hand over his chest. "You saved my life. That means you're part of it now." The boy smiled, a small, cautious, but real smile. Then he climbed into the car. As the car pulled away, Ricardo stood alone at the edge of the sand, the ocean wind tugging at his sleeves. He watched until the taillights disappeared into the city. Behind him, the restaurant was quiet again, just another evening in paradise. But something had shifted, not just in the lives of those who witnessed the truth, but in the fabric of a city where courage often goes unseen. And somewhere in the distance, under a sky full of stars, a boy named Mateus began to believe that he was more than what the world had told him, that even a voice from the margins could echo like thunder, that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones no one sees coming. If this story moved you in any way, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Honestly, every like, every subscription is what keeps this channel breathing. Without your support, it's nearly impossible to keep going. So if you can help, know that this only exists because of you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying until the end. I'll see you in the next story.